everyone turns to it, and because, but at the same time, it's this love-hate relationship with the region, because if they're too good at what they do, then they criticize the countries, and it's the countries, because it's a multilateral organization, it's the countries that support the work of the Commission. So all to say that it's just, it suffers from huge caseloads. They receive thousands of complaints and from all over, and they just are unable to process them, and they have to unfortunately make decisions, and sometimes the decision is we are going to get to it, but it could take a few years before we get to that point. So that speaks to the importance and the weight that member states put on the Commission in terms of their priorities, in terms of giving funding to make these cases move forward. So I think maybe activists would criticize Chile for being too slow, but I think the state might say, look, we respect due process, and we wanted to go through every single possibility of not just legal proceedings, but also mediation efforts before it went any further.
Just a comment to build that. I think it also implies a shift on what the state response or state defense before the inter-American human rights system. We've seen over the past 5 years how the state defense has improved significantly for what it was 10 years ago. So in a way, they have more, a more thorough view or complete view of what the outcome would be.
Right.
And in a way, the part where you said the mediation part has become more important over the past few years, especially with these new reforms that were adopted in March.
Right.
So in a way, because back in the day, 10, 15 years ago, it was deny the fact.
And then so it would be forced to go through the system.
Exactly. So now the Commission, without its shortcomings and limitations that as you mentioned before, has gotten more important on a way to mediate many cases. Right. And in a way, for example, the Atala Rifu case has become, in a way, a contentious matter, because I think there are 5 or 10 cases on LGBT rights, but they're just waiting for, the states have asked for additional time to solve the issues internally, because they know that if they go to the court, they will lose the case.
Right.
No, so in a way, this system, the strengthening of national defense to have a realistic approach of what the case might be, along with the importance of the precedents that the court is building, is helping in a way get rid of those cases fast enough, and in benefit of victims in the end.
Right.
Thank you.
My name is Carmen Paquet. C'est juste une hypothèse, but hi Doug. But I'm wondering if, because of your statement that LGBTI rights are further ahead in some cases than women's rights, what would have happened if it had been a gay father? We'll never know, right? But I think what is the dimension of her being a woman?
Right. Yeah, some of that is speculative, because but it does raise an interesting point on and I referred to that before about how, the whole feminist movement in the Americas, and how, what are the linkages with the LGBT movement. And I would say, from what I've read of the Atala case, that the LGBT movement back in 2002, when it started, was not as strong as it is now. So who was there to support her? I'm sure that there were a lot of women's organizations that were supporting her, and it was probably a situation where those organizations made a difference in terms of pushing that forward,
Is there a few other questions? Oui.
Si je peux me permettre une deuxième question.
Oui.
Justement, en Amérique latine, on voit on voit surtout dans les États qui ne sont pas encore laïques, c'est-à-dire par exemple au Costa Rica où est-ce que l'État et l'Église ne sont pas encore séparés. Puis on voit des décisions qui sortent de la Cour interaméricaine des droits de l'homme, like the decision on or Costa Rica's been ordered to get some kind of legislation on beach fertilization, all that kind of stuff. And then they're looking at domestic law where church law, or church influence anyways, has a lot of influence. How does the inter-American system reconcile domestic constitutional law? Where, and like that's like for like when I was in Costa Rica this summer working at the embassy, that was the big thing. Like legal scholars have said that the inter-American, I mean obviously there's that clash between international law and constitutional law, and I don't know what your experience has been with the dialogue in Washington D.C.
Well, and why don't you introduce yourself and explain a little bit how you have learned about the inter-American system yourself.
I'm Stéphane, I'm a second year law student au programme de droit canadien ici à l'Université d'Ottawa. J'ai travaillé avec Doug à la mission diplomatique canadienne à Washington D.C. for a summer. I was an intern with Doug at the permanent mission in Washington D.C.
So I think.
And you survived.
Yes, yeah, yeah. It's the summer that will kill you in Washington more than anything else. But again, it's and I'm not a lawyer, but I would just say that there is this interesting dynamic between domestic change in domestic law and what gets moved into, I wouldn't say an international forum, but an inter-American forum. And I think the gentleman that spoke about the changes to the system and how like you were mentioning, there's now about 10 LGBT cases before the commission, and so that I think answers the question in a way. So those countries are struggling in an internal domestic dialogue right now and it becomes a political question. How far can we go to support these rights? What are we able to change within our country? What can't we change? And I guess if it comes to the point where they can't make that change without having a political problem, then the answer is it's going to go to another level. But of course the challenge is in the Caribbean where they don't have the convention. So it's been more difficult to move that to an international forum, although I understand the Commonwealth has had discussions about human rights and LGBT issues in the Caribbean as well.
And also Barbados, I think, is a member. I think Barbados is one of the few, if not the only,
Right.
Caribbean country that's a signatory to the Inter-American
Convention on human, yeah.
And what is the situation at this moment with Venezuela in that question? The question is, what's happening with those who are in need for kind of appeals to a...
So Venezuela denounced the convention in September 2012, and so that took effect in September 2013. So it is no longer it's no longer a country that is part of the convention, which then means that it has a similar status to Canada in that it recognizes the jurisdiction of the Commission, but it does not recognize the jurisdiction of the court. So I would imagine that would mean that there are still cases regarding Venezuela that are before the Commission. The difference then becomes, how do those move forward? And they will not go to the court now. And now there's Ecuador and Bolivia have also made, the leaders have made statements saying we're thinking about pulling out of the convention as well.
And that will have an impact eventually on LGBT rights in Latin America?
Gee, I don't, I would hope not. I mean, I think that, you know, if you take the example of Venezuela, I think whether whether they've ratified or have not ratified the convention, the Atala case still happened in Chile, and they read about it in the paper, and that has an impact on popular culture, on civil society, and so I think it creates a dialogue and a discourse. So I wouldn't necessarily put so much weight on whether a country is a signatory or not.
But still, the Supreme Court is the final place to go.
Yeah.
And one last question. Yeah, you're allowed to a third one. Go ahead.
Just one last question, if you can. How do you see the relationship between the Inter-American Human Rights Court, especially for like Barbados and Belize, which I think are the two countries are signatory to both the convention and the court, and the CCJ, the Caribbean Court of Justice, because for those two countries, the CCJ is also their final appellate court.
I honestly don't know what those linkages are. I thought that there was one process for human rights, international human rights law, and for criminal law that goes to like the ICC and all that, but I don't know. I honestly don't know that answer, but it's an interesting question.
Anybody? Is it? Yeah, Michael?
Michael Bach, just a very simple question. You mentioned Canada was very supportive of the upgrading of resolutions, but which countries were leading that? Which countries sort of pushed it forward?
Well, it's technically it was Brazil in this particular case, although it's always a little difficult to say definitively who's always leading the charge in these multilateral processes, because a country could be in name supporting a resolution, but there could even be other countries that are even more enthusiastic about it. But for the purposes of managing the 100 or so resolutions that go through, each country kind of takes their turn with pushing forward through certain, but it says a lot about Brazil's commitment to that as an international issue that they're willing to deal with. And my understanding, I haven't studied this a lot, but that they and South Africa in the UN human rights system have been very vocal and very supportive of LGBT human rights. So it doesn't surprise me at all that they're on board with that.
Last chance. Penelope Simon at the end, is our acting director of the Human Rights Center.
Hello.
Just before saying thanks to Doug, Janoff, I would like to mention only that we will have another Dîner Latin in February, to be determined what will be the title exactly, but the organizer is here in the room. So we'll see that. Stay tuned. We have a website starting also under the Human Rights Center website. So all the information, the link to the book to Doug also and his PowerPoint presentation, and once we'll edit the session also, because Ottawa University has the obligation also to put in writing the presentation. So it will be on the website. So we are inviting you to go at the website and check this. And also our little organization observatory of the Latin America will have a conference in March 24th and 25th, I think. Okay. So it'll be very interesting topics. And a lot of the organizers are here too today, so we'll stay a little bit later to talked about that, but we are all invited to those topics, and we look forward to see you again. I would like to say many thanks to Doug. It was very interesting, and we look forward to continue working with you in the center. Thank you very much, Doug.
Thank you for coming. Merci d'être venu.